And then about 2 hours later, email from the client. Did you tell X to fuck off, never call again, and that we would never consider him as a candidate if he didn't accept the offer? And this has come to my email. Then we get an email from the candidate with solicitors CC'd in, suing the business for damages, and because we'd run back to the client and said a few things, and for something like compensation for rejecting the offer and things like this. I can't exactly remember what it was, but forwarded it to my boss. Client goes, yeah, we're not going to work with you again. And this client was making us as a business about probably 1.5 million a year. Biggest client that we had.
Welcome back to the Carrot and Stick podcast, a podcast series where we get under the skin of all things sales management and motivation to understand what makes our wonderful profession tick. Today, I'm sitting down with a really interesting guest. Tom Cox is the founder and director of Thomas Berkeley Recruitment, and this is the most surprising part. He's 21 years old. But don't let the age fool you. Tom has been in recruitment since he was 15 years old, and in the last 6 years, has become a £1 million biller at his previous role, and has taken what he learned across those 6 years of recruitment into his company today. What's also really surprising is that Thomas Berkeley are a fully remote recruitment company. You can only say that about a few companies in the UK, it feels like these days, as most are a hybrid, if not fully in office. We have a good talk through Thomas's journey to setting up the company, all the things that he learned in those previous 6 years before founding Thomas Berkeley, why they chose to go fully remote and what it means for him and how he has to adapt his management and leadership style, why hiring juniors over more experienced individuals might be the play, and also how he manages performance on a day-to-day basis in this remote environment. We stop and tell the whole thing with some wonderful chat. At the very end, you'll hear two unbelievable stories. The horror story is probably my favorite that I've heard on any episode of this so far. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. This is Tom Cox, founder and director at Thomas Berkeley Recruitment. All right, Tom, really appreciate you sitting down with me today. Thank you so much for coming on. Opening little 30, 60 seconds here as well. Tell us a little bit about you. Who is Tom Cox? What is Thomas Berkeley? Give me the spiel that maybe you give to your clients when you first get in touch.
Yeah, 100%. So obviously I'm Tom Cox. I founded Thomas Berkeley. First of all, thanks for having me on, Derry. Right. It's been long awaited. Essentially what we do is we're a small recruitment business of, probably what I'd say is the top 1% of recruiters that specialize in recruiting across the financial industries and technology. Typically focusing on trading firms, hedge funds, fintechs. We do have a startup business as well that focuses on just scaling new businesses. And then we also touch upon sort of consultancies as well. So we are a small business. We will stay a small business. We're not really going to scale too much. We're focused on the consultants that we have and making sure that we can offer as much of a direct and, one-to-one approach as possible. We're not even a year old yet. It's been a massive learning curve for us, but we've had a good year, and we're looking forward to the next few.
I feel like you may be the only recruitment owner at the minute that's saying, I've had a good year, because it feels like everyone's had a really crap year given how a lot of 2023 went for people.
Yeah.
I guess because you kind of started relatively recently, what has your perspective been maybe on speaking to other recruitment founders, for example, maybe friends that in the industry? I imagine for some of them you've heard it's tough. Why do you think it's been such a good year for you guys?
I would say in the grand scheme of things, in terms of how successful I've been in my recruitment career, yes, you called it a crap year in terms of, what we're doing numbers wise. But for me, it's been a good year because it's something that I'm really passionate about. And, starting up a business in possibly the worst climate we've seen, I mean, some may even say since 2008, right? And still being here to tell the story of how we've survived 2023. It's pretty much the same when I speak to other founders. Unfortunately, some of them haven't made it, and they've had to shut up shop, which is a shame. The stories are all the same. COVID was great, and now we're suffering the backlog of filling so many roles from 2020 to 2020, probably even November 2022. And then from that Christmas period at the end of that year, it's just been, what the hell's going on? That's where everyone's been at. Mate. Everyone has experienced the same. Different industries are doing better than others. Technology is really suffering. Finance is really suffering. You've got things like healthcare, which are doing well in terms of the fact there's always going to be a demand for healthcare. But I know that in healthcare recruitment, the margins are nowhere near as good as other industries. So it sort of rebalances itself out. But I would say it's good in the fact that it's been such a learning curve for me. It's been so different to anything I've done. And, I've been in 360 recruitment for maybe not as long as other directors have, but the experience that I've had has been rich. But going from a 360 consultant in someone else's business to your own, it's just, you're adding a whole nother 360 cycle as it is just running the business. So it's been massively fun, massively stressful, really tough. But, who doesn't like a challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got 3 really good topics to go through around this sort of journey of setting things up by yourself. But before we jump into that a little bit further, what was the trigger that led to you wanting to go and, set up Thomas Berkeley? What was it that made you want to do this on your own and not be in a larger recruitment group, or even maybe even a smaller, more kind of tightly knit small company like yours?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's definitely a mixture of things that's led me there. Obviously, to a lot of people, I'm probably too young to start a business. That's the one thing is, why would you start a business that young? This is when you need to be in the office.
How old are you, Tom?
I'm 21.
Bloody hell, mate. Jesus, fair play. Fair play.
But, for many people, they don't start their careers until fresh grad. So you're looking at 21, 22, and then 5 years down the line, they're 26, 27. Well, I started recruitment when I was 15. It was my first ever office job. I got my recruitment job in a mix of me doing my GCSEs. And I pretty much part-time did my GCSEs and part-time did recruitment when I first started out, which not many people can get away with now, but I had a great setup with them, and it allowed me to continue education and continue doing my GCSEs. I think that the 5 years that I did in recruitment, I experienced big companies, small companies, companies with 2 or 3 people, companies with 50 above. I had a remote, hybrid, on-site. I experienced a lot in those 5 years, and I had really, really bad years where, my boss would go to me, when are you going to start making me some money, basically? And then I had some really good years where my bosses were able to buy houses and nice Porsches, over the money that I've made them. But I think what it was is I felt like I'd achieved everything at the company I was at. And I thought, what am I going to get from working from someone else that I can't get from setting up on my own? And when I actually sat down and thought, actually, I'd love to do it my way, and I think actually I can do it better than what most companies are offering at the moment, I just went in, no planning, just, hadn't even set up the company yet, handed in my notice and started. So some people might say, well, that's stupid. I would say it's the best thing that's ever happened to me and the best thing that I've ever done.
Amazing. That's a really interesting story as well, having started recruitment so early. Like, I hear a lot of people start recruitment, straight out of uni or out of school when they're like, just kind of fell into it. But to have done it during your GCSEs as well sounds pretty mega.
It was. And, going, when you're 15 years old, I was taking home £700 a month. I was used to, £1, £2 a day from my mum to go down the shop only a couple of years ago. And then all of a sudden I'm taking home, I'm seeing thousands coming in, and I'm thinking, wow, this is it. And I'll be honest with you, I had no idea what recruitment was at the time. I had no idea. Everyone, when you're that age, everyone says, what do you want to do? You need to know what you want to do. You need to know the avenue you want to go down. I was always quite academically smart. I could just never apply myself. And this comes back to the whole topic that, you might want to dive in later on, that, when I was diagnosed ADHD, and then, it would come down to, I'd come down to the test times. In my mock exams, I'd get A's and A stars. It would come down to the real thing, and I couldn't do anything. Part of that was because I didn't try hard enough, and that's just me holding my hands up. And part of it was because I really struggled in that moment. And then it was when I was doing those sorts of exams, I thought, this just isn't for me. College isn't for me, and university isn't for me. So I went out and I interviewed, and the guy that founded the company, he interviewed me, had a Rolex on, and he had a BMW i8 out the front that was brand new. And he said, if you want that car out front and you want this watch that I've got on my wrist and you want these £2,000 shoes that I'm wearing and this £10,000 suit, you come work for me and I'll make you that. And I mean, what did a 15-year-old say to that? You say,
You're
hell
like,
yeah,
yes.
man. Let's do it. Let's do it. And it was great. It was a great experience. It was amazing. It was honestly getting into recruitment. Some people would say, it's the worst thing they've ever done. And a lot of people, it's really tough. But for me, I love being challenged. I love things going wrong and I love things going right. And it is just the best thing, the way that my mind works and how I like to apply myself, the best thing for me.
Amazing. Mate, great story. And I'm sure plenty of lessons you're going to share in a minute as well around what it's been like in this last year or so with Thomas Berkeley being set up. I asked you before what 3 areas you wanted to go into, and you said recruitment management styles, the kind of like more older style versus the way that you like to manage. The second one was around being a fully remote company, which I think is, I'm not going to say controversial, but even across the 300 plus recruitment companies we work with, only 4% are fully remote. So I know that it's quite a unique thing to be fully remote in recruitment. Yeah. And then also how you manage experience versus managing juniors. Like you said earlier on, you like to hire that top 1%. So I'm really keen to dive into that as well. All three of those still sound good to you?
Yeah, that sound good. Yeah.
Wicked. Let's do it then. Let's start with that management style one, because this is something that I think when many people think of recruitment or even like old school sales teams, they imagine everyone being stuck in an office, being told you've got to stand up till you book a meeting or close a deal or whatever. You're here from 9 till 9, like you don't have weekends, all that kind of stuff. What's your take on old versus new? And I guess to start with, what do you perceive as the old style? Is it the same as mine, or do you think something else, maybe what you've seen yourself? And what do you think the new style is that you're trying to employ in your company?
Yeah, I think old style is becoming more and more controversial, and it's actually something that really worked for me. I as I said, I love getting stuff wrong and I love getting stuff right. So, when I first got into recruitment, it was make 400 calls a day, send 200 emails a day, log all of your KPIs on the system, and don't go home until you've hit them. That is what recruitment was when I first started. And, as you know, that wasn't too long ago. We're now in a world where the new management is, I think it's a lot more soft. And it's probably controversial me saying that, but it's soft. People are a lot more emotional, I think, now. And I think you have to pay attention to that and pay attention to how people feel, which I think most people would say, well, why should you care about if you're paying them, why are you caring about how they feel? And my argument with that would be is exactly why I adopt probably a good mixture of both, everything good about the old and everything good about the new. By no means am I saying I'm perfect, but I try my best to get the most out of both sort of styles of management. I think with the old style, it's really good to have a tougher approach, and it's really good to outline exactly what the expectations are in terms of, what is going to take someone into that next level. Because as a manager, you have to show the people that are working for you, how are they going to achieve what you promised them in the interview stages? How are you going to get them to where they want to be in their career, earning what they want to be earning and billing what you want them to be billing? And that's a great form of the old style management, is outlining the things that they have to do, the calls they have to make, the emails, the structure of their day that they have to have in order to get them there. And then adopting the new style where you listen to how they're feeling. If they're not enjoying something, they're not going to do it. And I always say, it's almost like being a personal trainer in a way. If you get someone into a gym and tell them to exercise and do something that they really enjoy doing in terms of exercising, the likelihood of them going back and doing something they enjoy is tenfold over telling them something to do that they don't want to do. And they're not going to lose weight. They're not going to put on the muscle they want to do. So adopting that into recruitment is finding out what works for someone. Everyone is different. Recruitment has been the same for so many years, but where we need to focus now is what does the individual person, what works for them? Does it work for them to be on the phone more, or does it work for them to post more social media content, getting inbound business and making planned calls from that inbound business? So working with someone to outline what their preferences are, where they feel comfortable and where they feel that their strengths and weaknesses are, outline those adopting that into the old style management of the targets, and then putting them both into one piece and going from there.
It's a really poor form.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Where more from work than just money and just a number. It's got to be more than that. And I feel very much in the crossfires as a millennial, sat bang on in the middle. Actually, it's kind of a mix of a lot of things. And we're all sat here crying about house prices and that. And it's a whole different conversation. Yeah. But probably where it sits in the middle, actually, like you say, is a blend of the two styles where you want to be saying to them, look, you want to be able to achieve A, B, and C. I'm willing to let you do it how you want to do it. But when does it come to a point where you turn around and say, look, you're saying to me you don't like the phone and therefore you want to do social media inbound? That's cool. But do you then still hold them to a number on that and say, okay, well, I want to make sure that you're posting this much in a week to make sure you can be successful, or I need to see this many leads coming in from you for you to show that that method is successful? Where do you draw the line on where you put a number on those kind of approaches?
Yeah, it's a really tough one because, as you say, sitting in the middle of the old versus new is exactly where most people aim to be. And I think that a lot of people, and certainly I did when I first started hiring, was finding that balance of, listening to people's feelings, but then also taking into account that just because they feel a certain way doesn't make it right. And people need to be guided. And at the end of the day, I've had success in my career so early on because I've listened to the people that have had success over their previous career, and they've had success because they've listened, and it passes down. So if I'm saying to someone that hasn't seen the success they want yet, do what you want, well, they're not going to see that success because they haven't seen it yet, doing their approach. So then we look at, okay, cool. So we've given you free rein to try what you wanted to try. Now I'm going to step in and show this is what I would do, and this is what I did do in order to become £1 million biller. And this is where you need to take things to the next level. And how we're going to get there is we need to work together. And having that management style, that one-to-one mentorship over a micromanagement is 100% the way forward. Micromanagement is okay for a certain period of time before people start to rebel against that. And they start to find ways to get around the micromanagement. If someone's making 400 calls a day, prove to me that those 400 calls a day were a good use of your time. And I doubt very many people could have done because they were just trying to meet the targets that they were set. What you need to do is outline a plan to get the most out of the time that you would be spending on the phone. So I only make probably 30 to 40 calls a day on a good day. But every single one of those calls has a purpose, and a very strong purpose, whether it's a management call, whether it's a candidate call for an interview preparation or a post-interview call, screening new candidates, speaking to my team. But those calls are so beneficial. And every time I come off that call, I need to think to myself, was that worth the 20-minute conversation I just had? And 99% of the time, in my experience, certainly now knowing what I know, it is well worth my time. And there's a big debate on, and something that I discussed with a few people, is Teams meetings. And there's a great argument of, did that have to be a Teams meeting, or could it have been an email? And the exact same rules apply. Did that have to be a phone call, or could you have done that another way? On the contrary, I see a lot of people coming into recruitment and someone that, basically the first person that I hired, they came into the business, I'll send them an email, I'll send them a text message. Why not call them? If you can call them now and get them on the phone right this very second and have that more personal approach, the email and the text are irrelevant. I can read a text in 300 different ways. You can only read the expression of tone in one way, and that's the expression of the tone that it comes across as. So being on the phone face-to-face, Teams calls, video calls, whatever it may be, they will always be superior to an email and a text. And that's what you have to, when you're managing someone, is not telling them to do something, it's telling them why they're doing it. What are they going to get out of it? And that's how you adopt the new and the old, is accounting for their performance and their emotion, and do they feel like they belong, and why are they doing something, and then giving them the reason. You must make, I don't ever give a number of calls you have to make a day. Let's say, for example, if I say you give me 3 candidates for this role by the end of the day, and then let's look at how we're going to achieve that. And then we look at a plan. You might get some from this job board, you might get some from LinkedIn, you might get some from an application, you might get some from going through our database, and showing them how they're going to get there as opposed to just saying, do it. That's where I would say the middle ground is, and how I try to manage. And do I always get it right? No. But that's why I think the year has been so good, because it's shown me a completely different side to me in recruitment that I didn't know I had before from a management perspective.
Interesting. And to be fair, I imagine we'll come on to this in a minute, because it's around the whole fully remote way that you guys work. But for those that are listening and maybe you're really curious, okay, then, Tom, you've got some great ideas around finding that middle ground and managing in a certain way. What does that look like in day-to-day and week-to-week execution? How often are you sitting down with the folks that you work with and talking through their approach to getting in new business, for example? What do those conversations look like? What day do they happen on? Give us an idea around that.
Every day I speak to them, every day. And that has to be the way it has to be. You can't feel detached from the business that you're in. And I don't call them, what have you done today? Show me what you've done today. I call them and say, how was your evening? I'll call them in the morning. How was your evening last night? What did you get up to? I did X, Y, Z, and talking to them about their life and getting them involved, because these conversations are what you would have in the office. And I won't touch too much upon those remote conversations yet. And then deep diving and asking them questions, because I could sit on the phone and talk to them and tell them something for half an hour. What is the likelihood that they're actually going to understand and believe and feel like what I'm telling them to do is the best course of action? So we plan together. What's going right, what's going wrong. And these are the conversations we have every morning. And it's not first thing in the morning, 8:30, I'm calling up my team. What are you doing today? What's the plan? Give me 5 CVs ASAP. The call is, how was your evening last night? What are you thinking for the day? Letting them run their course. This is what I was planning today. And then maybe giving my feedback. I understand why you would want to do X, but I think actually, in order to get more candidates for this role, a better avenue would be this. Do you know what, Tom? You're right. I will do that approach, and I'll try the thing I suggested a bit longer in during the day. So having the calls I have every day, and I'll message throughout the day, not from a micromanagement perspective. How are you getting on? Do you need me to do anything? Are you thinking that, the original plan we had in the morning, is that still applicable? Or have you found another avenue that you think is actually more worthwhile than what we suggested in the morning? And being a team, just because I own a business doesn't mean that I'm any better than them. So understanding why they want to have their approach, them understanding why I want to have a certain approach, coming to a middle ground and being the most effective that we can as a team. That's what every call looks like. And I'll speak to them Monday through Friday, morning and evening.
I love that. I think it's a really cool idea, because it's, again, really positioning yourself not as a manager, but as a coach more than anything else. Yeah. It's questioning the line of thinking. It's looking to have that personal relationship beyond saying, where are my numbers? Which, again, is not what you're really too interested in. You're much more about, what have you tried? What's working? What's not, right?
Exactly. And I've been in positions before, and I only adopt these tips and the way of working because I know what pissed me off and what didn't. I know that when I had my manager sitting on the corner of my desk, looking at my laptop, asking me to show him what I've done through the day, that makes me not want to work, because he might then suggest something that he doesn't understand why I've done something and the course of action. And then I'm steering off of my day plan and doing something that's completely irrelevant to what I want to be doing. So it's really key to have that team aspect. And I've had that before. And I remember being in that position where my manager sat down with me and would listen to me explaining the course of my day, why I'm doing something, explaining to him. And I remember feeling a lot more in control of my desk. And that's, as a recruiter, each desk is their own business. Each one of my team, they run their little businesses within Thomas Berkeley. Each desk is treated as a different business. Every single person works differently, has different targets. Not that I really set hard targets anyway. I've never actually had the hard target conversation with them. But the expectations are clear. But everyone works differently, and everyone is just as successful through different avenues and methods.
Like it. Nice. Wicked. And we did kind of loosely touch on this throughout that conversation, that second topic that we mentioned, this fully remote team that you've got. Part of that is addressed by this daily conversation every morning, going through, okay, right, talk to me about what you're thinking, where can I help, all that kind of good stuff. what else do you do when it comes to running a remote team? Because again, you are one of very few companies, it seems, in the recruitment industry that are fully remote.
I'd like to say it's the best thing for a recruitment business to do, but I'd be lying. Being remote is tough. It's really tough. It has its perks. People seem to be happier. But when it comes, I always say remote working is great in the good times and horrible in the bad times. And I've experienced that as a recruiter and as a business owner, that being in the office with the team on a good day would have been amazing. But then being at home and having a good time is also good. It's really tricky to sort of explain why I think remote is better than an office, because if I had the choice to have a lovely office and grow a team and we were all in one location, I think I would probably choose the office. But we were remote.
So why did you choose not to then?
Talent. Recruiters are really hard to come by. So in order to expand how we could recruit and the talent that we could bring in, I went remote. And I thought, let's see how this does. And I haven't thought about changing it because it has been successful. There are people that we've brought onto the business. We scaled to almost 10 people within about 6 months, which is really fast. And probably the wrong decision. But we soon found that people that said they wanted remote thought they did and they didn't. And
they liked the sound and the convenience of being remote, but then really when it came around to how they actually work best, which I guess is a slightly different question, they work best around other people in person.
Especially in the year that we had, where everything that was supposed to go right went wrong. And the true test is of someone, anyone can be successful when things are going right. What truly shows someone that's going to be successful is how they act when things go wrong. And the people that we had on board that were remote, and we also actually we had an offshore team for a certain period of time. And when things were tough, trying to manage their expectations and trying to manage them from an emotional perspective and show them that things will get better was really tough, because you try and have that one-to-one feel, but it's just not quite there. So it is really tough, but it has its massive perks. The people that I've got with me now, they love it. And I wouldn't ever ask them to go into an office and say, you must. I would say, we've just bought an office in central London. If you want to travel in, let me know the days and we'll meet up. I wouldn't ever say we bought an office, come in now, because we haven't hired them on that basis. And I think this is where a lot of companies go wrong. It has its ups and its downs. The reason we chose to go remote was because of talent and really talent only. And also when you set up, you don't want to be putting $5,000 a month in an office. Certainly when you think...
Very true. When money's scarce, it's the last thing you want to do.
So it was a mixture of a few things. I think down the line, we will definitely have an office, 100%. And for those, the talent that we want to recruit that want to be in the office, because being remote has enabled us to have geographical expansion in terms of the talent that we can bring in. But a lot of people now are wanting to go back into the office. So it's also limited us for certain talent as well. So it has its pros and its cons, and it will forever be an argument, remote working or not. And I think whatever works is the only answer that should ever come up in that argument, is whatever works for that business and that person. And if you're someone that's looking for work and one company says you have to be in the office, don't apply for that job. Don't try and work something out where you go remote, because you know that wasn't their expectation. Choose somewhere else. Find a business that is aligned with your expectations. You wouldn't apply to a business that has a completely different skill set to what you know. So don't do it if the remote doesn't apply for you as well, is what I would say. And that's my argument, is just do what works for you. And right now, remote is working for us. It's tricky in some aspects, certainly from a management perspective, certainly with juniors. But it has great perks, and it can be great for me and for the team as well, and for the business from a cost perspective as well.
And we could definitely come on to that juniors piece, because I love how these topics all tie so well together. It's our third one is around that experience versus juniors piece. But before we jump onto that, one thing I'll come back to is what I would really love to see at some point, and I doubt we'll ever really find the stats for it, It's the companies that do go out there and say, oh, it's a remote role. Just kidding. It's 1 day a week. The other 4 are all in the office. How does that work out if a candidate eventually takes that role? Do they stick it, or do they turn around and go, well, I actually really wanted to be fully remote, and that now I'm not. I'm really, not feeling too good about that. Or they just have a massive turn down rates of candidates who apply and then discover later that it's very heavy office based. It's kind of a two-way piece where the candidate needs to know what is right for them. And when they say what's right for them, not what they like the sound of, but how they work best. And for the company, it's probably a degree of being honest about exactly how you work. If you say you're remote, is it 1 day a week or is it fully remote, right? And not enough detail.
And I think a lot of this comes down to a lot of it is blamed on recruiters, because at the end of the day, if we're brought on by a company,
recruiters always get the rap. That's the problem.
Sometimes everyone blames the recruiters, sometimes we're not. But I think what people have got to understand, if we're brought on by a business and they tell us this is a remote role, I'll say, is it fully remote? And they'll say yes. And then I say, where do they have to be located? Because, prime example, we're working with a Chicago hedge fund. They said it's fully remote. And I said, okay, cool. Where's your office? And they said, office is in X location. And I said, well, would you look at international candidates? Which most times is no. And they said, no, they have to be based in Chicago. So I said, is it fully remote? And they said, yes. So I said, so why do they have to be based in Chicago? Just in case they have to come into the office. Then it's not fully remote. This is where it gets really tricky, because then I've answered all that I can to find out what are the expectations. And luckily with that firm, actually, we managed to find this was about 2 years ago. We managed to find someone. They have never gone into the office, and they were within Chicago, and they were transparent, and they said you might have to on a really bad day, but like for a team meeting, if the market goes completely tits up, and we have to bring everyone into the office to strategize. Luckily that never happened, and they're doing better than ever now, and they're one of our clients now for this business.
Interesting.
But it becomes really tricky when companies tell recruiters one thing, we go to market, offer comes round, the company tells someone a completely different thing. And then they're like, well, this recruiter told me it was remote. And then they're like...
Do you think that's on the company, or is that on the recruiter for not doing their due diligence to get the information they need?
Either or. Because I've had situations where I've said, is this fully on site? Is this fully remote? And they said it's fully remote, 100%, you'll never get asked. 6 months down the line, the company's asked the person to come in 3 days a week. Well, I know I've done my due diligence. There's only so much I can ask before I have to take it and say, okay, cool, this person's definitely fully remote. 6 months later, the company decides they want to go on site. Some people might say, well, this recruiter lied. I would say, well, no, that recruiter did their due diligence and it was right at the time. They can't manage a client for 6 months. They manage a client on the roll, and once it's placed, that's it. Alternatively, you might have a recruiter that says, is this, they might say, what's the role? It's fully remote. They've not said, is it really? Is it going to change down the line? And the company has gone, actually, obviously, to be honest with you, we did actually tell the recruiter it was 1 day a week, but he's just not pushed for the answer. So it's all circumstantial. I think ultimately, really, you should blame the business for not being transparent. But recruiters sometimes need to know that businesses will do that in order to secure more talent and not be as transparent as possible.
Totally, yeah. It's that hard one where companies do want to get the top talent in. And so there's kind of almost a reason on their side to hide info, but also on the other for not pulling that information out. If only life were more simple, right? That'd be the dream. Here we are. Cool. So let's go on to that last topic then. Experience versus juniors. Now, you said you just kind of scaled the team up and you saw those that maybe weren't quite seasoned enough recruiters to be able to deal with it when things started going bad. Whereas by the sounds of it now, the team that you've held on to, you believe they're a little bit more kind of battle-hardy than that. They're able to deal with the ups and downs and they can work comfortably remotely. What's your view on managing more experienced consultants versus more junior ones?
It's completely different. You're almost not managing a recruiter with juniors, and you're managing someone that's stuck in their way with the senior. So it has to be approached really differently. And this goes back to what I said earlier about everyone is different. Juniors, I think from a remote perspective, are harder, but they're also, and I don't really like the word moldable because it makes you seem like you're almost trying to control someone to be a certain thing, but certainly they are moldable into what you think is a good recruiter. So the juniors, if they have the right mindset and they're really wanting to be successful, they are probably a lot easier in the long term. Seniors, sometimes, if you find a senior consultant that's always done one way of working and the way you work isn't aligned, becomes a bit more tricky and you have a clash, because they know their stuff and you know that you're good at your job. So then you start to clash. And this is where it comes down to being a team and having a one-to-one, a mentorship relationship. And you can, if I hire someone with 20 years experience, I can definitely learn something from them. Equally, they can learn something from me. So I'm learning every day, running a business, meeting new clients, getting new roles on that I haven't worked previously before. The market's always moving, it's always changing, expectations. I'd say each is very different. I think, we've made more, everyone that's joined this team so far has been more junior. And I know we're going to get onto it in a little bit. We have one more senior coming into the business, which is a complete curveball to what the usual recruiter is, but they will be hopefully joining us very, very soon. The juniors that we've hired have been great, and I think why they've been so good is they've been rejected time and time again by other recruitment agencies. You haven't got the right experience, you're not good for this business, go away. And then I've got on a call with them and said, well, why do you want to do recruitment? Thought about what their goals are. Does it align with my goals? And that's the best thing I think you can ask in an interview is, are their motivations and goals aligning with what you want to do with the business? And, the 3 juniors that we have on, their goals are very aligned to us. And our top performer is 6 months into recruitment and smashing it. And he's amazing, and his mindset's great, and you can tell he really has something to prove, and he's proving it, and he's proving to these other agents that you said no to me, and he works night and day. I'll get a message from him at 1 a.m, just come off the phone to this candidate, I've emailed you a write-up, do you want to submit them? I've never asked someone to work that late, ever. I won't ever ask someone or tell someone you're working late tonight. It becomes tricky because we do the UK and the US market, which obviously the hours are very different. There is no expectation from me for them to work late outside of their usual core hours. But they do it because they know that they have to in order to get the best that they can performance-wise. The senior that we've got coming on is a complete curveball to what I'd usually hire. They're not definitely 100% coming on, but we're at those closing stages now where they're going to be started very soon, hopefully. I think for me personally, the way that I want to take the business, juniors are definitely the way forward, because the seniors maybe don't agree with being managed by someone so young. I think there's a lot of disrespect for someone as young as me, and I would hold my hands up and say I've lied about my age multiple times before, but they've never questioned it because the quality of service they get is probably better than anyone the actual age that I said that I was. And that's just because I can almost guarantee that I work harder than anyone else in the industry. I can almost guarantee it. Might sound a bit big-headed and it might sound a little bit braggy, but it's not. It's just because I'm in that point now where I have something to prove. And in order for my team to be successful, I have to be successful and I have to bring business in. So I work hard for myself and I work hard for my team as well. And they feed off of everything that I do. And it's
the way it should be. A leader should inspire.
I do my best. I do my best. And obviously, in the market that we're in such a tough year where I see, every day, sorry, I've had to shut down my recruitment agency. It's been such a journey, but I'm going to have to move to X, Y, Z. And I thought that cannot happen to me. That cannot happen to me because then they'll be right. You can't do this at your age. when actually I know that I'm probably doing better than most businesses that I've worked at previously at the moment. So, and that's not because they're bad. That's just because I work harder, I think.
Nice. And to tie a piece you said earlier, so you said you really think the future of the business is juniors, but you also said earlier on a little bit, juniors can be hard to shape, to mold, to kind of get into the place where they are good, strong recruiters working remotely or otherwise. How do you approach onboarding a junior so you know that they're able to get to that standard where you can trust them, remote or in person, no matter where they might be, that you can trust them to do the job where you can't necessarily be with them every single day?
That's a great question. It's detailed and there's a lot to run through, and it takes probably weeks at a time to get them fully onboarded. And that's just because there is nothing worse than when you're new being overloaded with information. So we have in-house made training modules that I made while I was setting up the business. That's gone on in my career and everything in my mind put down onto a PowerPoint presentation. And I share that with them in the most simplest form. And as the weeks go on, the training and the detail gets more and more in detail, and they're able to understand not just what to do, and again, I'll refer back, but why to do it. Why are they having this BD approach? Why are they posting on LinkedIn? What do they get from posting on LinkedIn? What do they get out of it from their personal branding? What do they get out of making calls? What do they get out of sending emails? How should they send an email? When should they send an email? What structure has it got to be? Every single point that makes up a 360 recruitment life cycle is taken from the basics to all the way through to how to manage a process, how to be the best recruiter you can be, and how to maximize being genuine. I think that's why we're successful, because we're genuine. I have a lot of candidates reach out to me. I mean, you might have even seen recently on my LinkedIn, I had a candidate that said to me, "You're the best recruiter I've ever worked with." He had 20 years experience, and every job he'd had was through a recruiter. All I did was check up on him regularly and call him regularly and make sure that he was okay, make sure the interviews went all right. I didn't do anything that I thought was out of the ordinary, but everyone is so focused on transactional deals as opposed to managing people that you might not make money off of right now. That candidate might not get placed. And as it happens, that candidate, unfortunately, we didn't place them, but he still thought I was the best recruiter that he'd ever worked with. And we get messages like that every day, which is amazing. And it's such a great feeling, more so than getting the deal, I think, when someone really appreciates how hard you work. But I just train them to be genuine. I train them, don't feel like you've got to be salesy. Just the best sales technique that you can have is being yourself, because if you get caught up in a lie, if you get caught up being ungenuine, you'll be unstuck.
Yeah. Authenticity, I think, is massively underrated. People love to follow a framework or a playbook, whereas, like you say, sometimes, sure, there are things that you can be encouraged to ask that are definitely going to help with a sales process or a recruitment process, but being authentic, I think, people always say it's not business buying from a business, it's a person buying from a person. At the end of the day, that authentic relationship is just so valuable. And if you get it right.
I try to teach them, just listen to everyone. Just listen to everyone. Take the time to have a call with the person that you might not be able to place now. Don't be transactional. There's 40,000 agencies in the UK alone. Don't be like the other 39,000. Don't be transactional. Make something of every call. And again, that refers back to what I said earlier. Just make every call worth it, whether it's now or 2 years down the line. Every call will pay off. You can work with someone, never place them, and then they're fed up at their job. They come back, and actually then you've got a job for them there. There's so much potential with every call that it might not be immediate. It might be down the line. That's the best training, I think, and I'm probably giving away too many tips here for other agencies. But that is the best approach that anyone can have. Any junior recruiter or even senior recruiter, if they're thinking, what do I need to do to maximize my billings? It would be stop thinking about billings. Stop thinking about deals. Stop thinking about numbers. Just think about people, and watch how much you grow, and watch how happy you become, in your job, and that is how you maximize the most out of the desk that you're on. 100%.
Spot on. Love all of that. Really good stuff. Cool. We're about 45 minutes in, so I want to move on to the favourite stories part of the podcast, which is really where we look back at your career so far, and I want you to tell us your favourite story so far, when something went really right for you that you're really proud of, maybe, and then a horror story. I'm not going to give all the details around it, maybe, and keep some bits redacted if you choose. But what's a real horror story that you look back on and just think, oh my God, I can't believe that happened?
Recruitment,
So,
there's probably 10 times more horror stories than there are success stories, man.
There's some crackers, I'll tell you that much.
I could dive into so many that would get me in so much trouble. I guess I'll start with a success story, because there are a lot to choose from. You know, I have had a great career, and I've worked with so many great people, and I've learned from so many great people. It's just picking one. I would say, actually, in terms of this business, actually, the biggest success story we've had is very, very recent. Back in January, we signed a retainer, our first retainer, my first ever retainer, for a good sum of money. And it was with one of the best firms, I think, that anyone in the industry that I work in would hope to work for. It was an exclusive contract from one email, one call, and retainers for 5 roles. And that was after a horrible 6 months, of working every second night I wasn't sleeping, getting nothing for it, making multiple placements and not getting paid, still not being paid that money, being owed a lot of money.
Classic.
Typical new recruitment agency, not being paid. And then out of nowhere, come into the new year, open up my inbox after a good New Year's party, open it up in the morning. Tom, we'd love to jump on a Teams call. Finish the Teams call. Great conversation. By the end of the day, we had a retainer signed for 5 roles. That is just that was the best feeling I think I've ever had. The dream. Honestly, I've done a lot. I've had a lot of success and I've had a lot of good stories, but I think it meant so much more because it was my brand and it was my hard work and it was all me and it was under my name and it was under the Thomas Berkeley name, and that was amazing. That would be probably my favorite success story, and that was only about 6 weeks ago.
Nice. Love that.
Yeah, horror story. Oh my God. Recruitment is funny. There's probably a lot that I could talk about. I don't know how friendly it is for a podcast.
Goes. I mean, to be honest with you, mate, people listen to this as recruiters as well, so they'll be sitting there nodding with you like, I get that, I feel that so much. You can tell us whatever the hell you want.
Oh, really tricky. I would say one of the ones that sticks with me the most is I was working for a firm that I'd really struggled to get a deal with. And everything was going wrong. I'd had about 240,000 worth of offers. None of it went through. Relatively new still to recruitment. And I was sat at my desk. I was trying to close this, and it was the biggest fee. It was a 70,000 fee, a huge fee. And I'm sat there and I just can't close the deal. And it's nothing to. I've got all of my notes. I've got a great relationship with the candidate, but the salary just wasn't right for him. And he'd had a better offer. And in his shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. I would have taken the other offer and run with it. My boss was over the other side of my desk, and he takes the phone off me. He says, "Tom, transfer me the fucking phone." Sorry for my language. That's what he said. "Tom, transfer me the phone." So, transfer over the phone. Speaks to my candidate, and I can see, and he's working his way, and I'm sat there and I'm listening, and I'm learning. I'm taking in what he's saying. I'm like, okay, cool. So that's the closing skills that he's doing. He's got a certain approach that maybe I didn't think of, and he's a lot more direct. Maybe this guy, he's demanding a bit of respect. So he's a lot more direct. And then out of nowhere, I've gone to the fridge, get myself a drink, which it was just an open plan office at the time that we had. Gone to the fridge, come back. All of a sudden, do you know what? This is my boss to the candidate. Do you know what? If you're not going to accept the offer, fuck off. Don't call me again, you dickhead. Put the phone down. And I'm just thinking, oh my, that was the one. That was the one. And he was getting there. And I was actually getting somewhere with him, and he was close. He said, look, just give me a couple of days. I'll weigh up the offers. And I had a great relationship with him. And that happened. And then about 2 hours later, email from the client. Did you tell X to fuck off, never call again, and that we would never consider him as a candidate if he didn't accept the offer? And this has come to my email. Then we get an email from the candidate with solicitors CC'd in, suing the business for damages. And because we'd run back to the client and said a few things, and for something like compensation for rejecting the offer and things like this. I can't exactly remember what it was, but forwarded it to my boss. Client goes, yeah, we're not going to work with you again. And this client was making us as a business about probably 1 point.
Oh my God.
I'd say that's one that comes to mind as one of my biggest horror stories, because they were my biggest client. And we'd almost got the deal. And I called him after, about probably 2 months down the line, and he hadn't got a job. He was bluffing about this other offer, and he would have taken the job. Yeah.
No way.
And that's when it becomes, just a bit of a nightmare to, oh my God, I've just missed out on X amount of commission because my boss couldn't hold it in a little bit. Yeah.
But it's a great story.
One of many in recruitment. Sure. There's lots and lots and lots that you can run through. But these are all things, it's a learning, not that I needed to learn anyway, not to tell a candidate to, everything that he did. But
really on my list of things to do in recruitment, to be fair.
That sticks with me because I was really young there as well. I'd only really just got into recruitment. Yeah, that was a moment. And I was sat there and I didn't know what to say. Yeah.
Just can't really be trained
it's not in the handbook, I'll tell you that.
No, I can imagine it's not. Amazing. Cool. I mean, that's a great story, so thank you for that. Last couple of questions then before we round up. Who, if obviously you have any, where do you go to learn or develop as a leader, as a manager? Where do you turn to? Could be books, podcasts, LinkedIn influencers, anything like that.
I think it depends on what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for motivation, and when things are tough, to know that things are going to go right, there's a great, for one, Stephen Bartlett, everyone's going to say it, Diary of a CEO, great podcast. And I think
great chats, aren't they?
Guests that he gets in, and realizing that these people that you just see on TV, they've been where you are, and knowing that success isn't overnight, and that it takes a lot of hard work, and everyone's been in the same boat. That's one for motivation. And I think the second one, and just because he's a very similar age to me, he's only 2 years older, Iman Gharzi, founder of IAG Media, one of the most successful, and his podcast most times is just him, and it's just him giving out gems of information. And it's all he's ever done. He come out of university, first thing he did, start up this media company. It's all he's ever done. And running you through how to do it. What he did wrong, what you can do right, and how he took his business from, pretty much being on the streets to living in a ridiculous, I don't even want to know how much the property's worth, this house in Dubai on the Palm Island. And it's great to have someone so close in age to look at and just get tips from, who's in the same generation as you, because a lot of these podcasts, they're maybe 1 or 2 generations above. So to have him, he's only 24. So he's
Sure,
part of my generation. He's he's one that more recently I've been going to, yeah. But
Nice.
LinkedIn's great. LinkedIn's great. Other people that are in recruitment, they're great. Just knowing that you're not alone. But in terms of podcasts, they'd be the best, I'd say.
Yeah, spot on. Love it. Cool. And then before we wrap things up, any kind of shout outs you want to give? Where can people find you if they want to follow the journey along and see where things
I'd
go for
say
Thomas Berkeley
just
over the
follow
next
us on
year or
LinkedIn,
two?
Thomas Berkeley Recruitment. Give us a follow on LinkedIn. Give me a connection. And look, my DMs are always open for people, whether you're in recruitment, whether you're looking for a job, or whether you just want to chat. I think a lot of people now need someone to talk to. So just drop me a connection on LinkedIn.
Fair, mate.
Tom Cox, Thomas Berkeley Recruitment. DMs are always open for anyone. And as you can tell, I like to talk. So I'm always open for a chat.
Well, it's definitely one of our longer episodes, mate, that's for sure. But it's been a really interesting story. So thank you so much for giving us time, mate. Hope you have a wonderful weekend and catch you soon.